Now, I mean, you know, is this going to make Prince Andrew sweat? I know it's such an old joke, I know.
Well, but you're right. I mean, you know, from those claims about not being able to sweat due to some medical condition to that sort of children's party at a Pizza Express in Woking, this is the interview that the Duke of York simply cannot escape. You know, This was the worst PR disaster since another Duke, the Duke of Windsor, gave a Nazi salute to Adolf Hitler in 1937.
Not a title, really, is it?
And, of course, you know, the decision of Amanda Thirsk, Prince Andrew's advisor, the very foolish decision to invite him to give this interview, will go down in the annals of history as one of the worst decisions ever. And, of course, not only did it break Prince Andrew, it also made Emily Maitlis, who's now, of course, an international star from this. And now anybody with a Netflix account can actually relive this bizarre episode in this series, which recounts essentially how they got the interview, the lead up to it, and then the interview itself, but doesn't go into the continuing fallout, which we still see even to this day. It's written by the BAFTA award-winning Peter Moffat and directed by the Emmy award-winning Philip Martin. So a very good team producing this, and it is a very slick production. As you say, Gillian Anderson, and she actually is, from what I've seen of it, very, very convincing as Emily Maitlis, and Rufus Sewell does a superb job as the Duke of York. Importantly, the film says it's a dramatisation inspired by real-life events. An important disclaimer which The Crown didn't put in front of its episodes, despite its historical inaccuracies and flights of fancy, so that's rather good. And it's based on the book Scoop, written by Sam McAllister, who was the producer who secured the interview with Prince Andrew. Now, you may remember when the Queen, when Prince Harry and Meghan were talking about racism in the royal family, the Queen had a statement saying recollections may vary. Well, it seems recollections may also vary in terms of how this interview was actually secured by Newsnight. If you watch this version of events in Scoop, this was essentially a one-woman deal done by Sam McAllister herself, and by so doing, she saved Newsnight from cuts by BBC budget accountants and so forth. Now, Emily Maitlis has her own three-part series coming out later this year called A Very Royal Scandal, and that will have a slightly different interpretation of events, in essence showing that actually it was a team effort by various people at Newsnight, and Sam McAllister was simply one of the characters involved in this. However, if you're part of the royal household, recollections may vary even more, because actually Amanda Thirsk, this advisor to Prince Andrew, had been approaching the BBC herself since 2018 to try to get an interview. So far from actually trying to pull Prince Andrew in, it was a question of actually trying to delay Prince Andrew to come on until he would agree to talk about the Epstein saga. So what the truth is, we don't really get to know, but actually I think this will be a very, very worrying moment for Prince Andrew, of course, who's very keen to rehabilitate himself.
Very much.
And to have these constant reminders coming out is not helpful, to put it mildly.
Because some of the things, I mean, he thought it was one of the best things ever done. Can we remember that? He thought, I thought that went rather well. And everyone's going, you sort of watched the interview, the original interview, like you used to watch Doctor Who when you were a kid, like from behind the sofa going, oh, my God, what's he going to say next? But he thought it went rather well. And some of the things that came out of it, you know, the fact that I can't sweat because of something that happened when he was serving, the pizza incident in where was it? Woking.
In Woking. Pizza Express in Woking.
Yeah, absolutely. All these have gone down in history now. But the one thing that gets me is he's still... And the latest picture we saw of the Duke of York was photographed riding a horse in Windsor on Friday. The timing... Smiling. And the timing of this is... We very rarely see him, Rafe, don't we? So the fact that he was out on his horse being photographed at the same time as this was out on Netflix, it makes you think that he's still thinking, I'm Prince Andrew, this isn't going to touch me. Well,
of course, he's a very proud man, and, of course, he doesn't want people to think that he's letting all of this get him down, and so this is, I would imagine, his way of asserting that, you know, look, I'm still going about my own duties, it's very much business as usual, and I'm biding my time. But you're quite right to bring up those instances in the interview, which really struck many people to be how out of touch with reality can someone be to make so many shocking statements, such as saying, I don't regret my relationship with Jacob Epstein because it led to many useful opportunities.
that?
Quite astounding sort of things. Being asked, why did you stay in his mansion on the Upper East Side after he had been convicted and sent to prison? Oh, because it was a very useful location for us to use. And then being asked about that infamous photograph where he's seen clutching Victoria Jeffrey and saying, well, that's me, but I can't tell whether that's really my hand or not. I mean, it stretches incredulity to the least.
Is it? Oh, no, we're running out of time, unfortunately, Ralph. But is it stupidity? There's a lot of that happening in the show today, not from me, hopefully. Is it stupidity or is it arrogance or is it a dangerous mix of the both?
I think there may be some truth in that. You might think that I couldn't possibly comment, but certainly it's a degree of being out of touch and living in another world and being interviewed by one of the heavy hitters at the BBC. Rather, they could have gone for someone who was a much lighter choice, but they didn't want to be seen to be evading the tough questions.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he was very poorly briefed.
He was, actually one of the biggest PR disasters of all time, and he thought it went terribly well, didn't he? Rafe Haider-Mankoo, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.